Okay, this is a review about how to translate sentences in Latin. One of the things that a lot of us try to do is we say, okay, Clemens is Clemens and shop is shop and renovated, so Clemens renovated his shop. That's really easy. But that's really not the point. What we really want to do is we want to look for the clues in the sentence. We want to look for a subject, a verb, and a direct object. Okay, we know that my subject needs to be nominative, so I'm going to be looking for some nominatives. My verb is going to, I don't know if you remember that chart, but we have, does it have a marker or does it have a clue? So those are usually going to end in OM, ST, moose, tis, and unt. Okay, and then our direct object is going to be accusative. If I do not know the endings that I need to know to translate, this is pointless. So if I need to practice a little bit extra so that I can look at a word and determine whether or not it's accusative or not, or nominative or not, or a verb or not, I need to spend a little bit of time doing that. So looking at this first sentence, I want to look at just the endings. Clemens doesn't have an ending. Mox doesn't have an ending. Tabernius does. It's AM. Suam does. It's AN. Renawit ends in T. It's my subject. Does it have a marker? No, it does not. There is no ERA. There is no BA. Does it have a clue? An S, a U, a V, or an X? It has a V. So I know that's perfect tense. Now, in this case, I have my verb and I have my direct object. I do not have my subject. So I look at the other two words, Clemens and Mox. Clemens is a third declension. That is nominative. So my nominative is my subject, Clemens. My verb is renovated. It does end in the T. This T right here ends in that T. It's renovated. And then I have the direct objects, Suam, which modifies Tabernius, his shop. I know the direct objects because they have that accusative ending, in this case AM. And so I have Clemens, renovated, his shop. And that leaves me with one word. That leaves me with Mox. Now again, I have to have some vocabulary ability here. In this case, Mox is an adverb that means recently, so, or soon. Soon Clemens renovated his shop. That's how I translate that. So one of the very basic things that I have to be able to do is determine whether something is my subject or nominative, and whether something is my direct object or accusative. I have to know these endings. A and I, us and e, and blank and es could be nominative. And os, and os, em and es could be accusative. That helps me determine whether or not something is my direct object or not, or whether it's my subject. So when I'm looking at this next sentence, fabros, os, well, that looks a lot like this os, doesn't it? That means that it's going to be my direct object. The next thing I want to do is I want to look at my verb. In this case, the first verb I have is conduxit. Okay? Now I need to ask myself, what tense is it? Does it have a marker? Does it have a clue? In this case, does it have a marker? The answer is no, it does not. It does not have a marker. So it can't be imperfect, which is BA or ERA, and it can't be pluperfect, which is ERA. Does it have a clue? It does have a clue. If I look, it has an X right here, and that was one of our clue words. So if it has a clue and no marker, it has to be perfect tense. No clue, but it does have a marker, so it's perfect tense. I'm going to translate as ED. So my basic translation for all of these sentences is going to be subject, verb, and direct object. In this sentence, I have fabros, which I said is accusative, and conduxit, which I said is my verb. Now, in this case, I do not have a subject. By looking at my verb, it ends in T, so my subject is going to be he, she, or it. I've been talking about Clemens, so I'm going to say that the subject is he. Remember, I translate conduxit as ED. The ED form of this is going to be hired. and then the direct object is craftsman. So I have he hired craftsman. They really are. All of these sentences are very simple if you break it down this way. The second half of the sentence is a little more difficult. When I have a qui, quai, or quod word, it's a relative pronoun, and it has to relate back to something. In this case, fabros. There's no other nouns there for it to relate back to. Now, within that clause, it's going to be used as the subject. How do I know that? Well, because I know that qui, quai, and quod are the nominative forms. So here are those forms. If it is nominative, qui, quai, quod, those are, I'm sorry, yeah, that's right. That is the, mess that up. It's qui, quai for the plurals. So the singular forms for the nominative for the masculine are qui, feminine, quai, neuter, quod. In this one I have qui. So it's either masculine singular qui or masculine plural qui. It can't be accusative. So it has to be my subject because it is in the nominative. So now that I've recognized qui as my nominative, I'm going to continue through the sentence. I see the as, and the as, that's accusative. Os, also accusative. And so both of those are going to be my direct objects because I have that qui, which is and, which is an and word. So I have qui as a subject, I have walrus and moros are my direct objects. The next thing I have is my verb. I look at my verb, and I see that it has no marker. There is no ERA or BA. It does have a macron over the vowel. Because it has a macron over that vowel, it's perfect tense. I'm going to translate it as ED. So, in this sentence, I have the subject, which is translated as who. I have the verb, which is translated as rebuilt or redid. And then I have my two direct objects, which are the doors and the walls. So I've completed that sentence by going subject, verb, and direct object. So as I translate that sentence, I have he hired craftsman. Remember, qui related all the way back to craftsman. So he hired craftsman who rebuilt, I don't know, the doors and the walls. Okay, this next sentence has an interrupter in it, but we're going to read through it anyway. We're going to read through it normal. We're going to look at those endings. Keteri, I. Taberni, I. Those look like they go together. That I, to me, is nominative and plural. You can see this I right here. All right, so it's nominative and plural. I have an interrupter here, quam, because I haven't gotten to a verb yet. I'm going to draw a line. Quam, eruptum, walde, temebant. That's where the last verb is, right there. So I'm going to box this out. This is what we call an interrupter. This really doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the main clause. So I'm going to continue on. I have clementum, that's at em, that's accusative. Right there's that em, that's the accusative. So it's going to be my direct object. Libentor doesn't have an ending I'm used to. And then finally I get that last verb, which is audiuebant. Okay. I'm only going to deal with what is outside of this interrupter. I'm not going to deal with this interrupter right now. I'm going to come back to it. Everything outside of it I'm going to start with. So we said Keteri and Taberni are my subject. We said audiuebant is my verb, and we said clementum is my direct object. Based off of those endings, you have to look at those endings. So let's put that together. What I end up with is the rest of the shopkeepers were helping Clemens. That's exactly what I did. I took those endings that I'm familiar with. I came up with a subject, a verb, and direct object. So I have the main clause. The rest of the shopkeepers were helping Clemens. Now, with that verb, I ask myself, does it have a marker? The answer is yes, it does. Does it have a clue? It does have a V back here, but the immediate one is the A. So I don't really have a clue. I do have a marker though, and even if I did have a marker, in order for it to be pluperfect, it would have to be ERA, which it is not. So I'm going to translate that with the BA, was, or were. I still have to deal with labentur. Again, vocab comes in here. It means freely. The rest of the shopkeepers were helping Clemens freely. Once I've completed the main clause, now I can go back to that interrupter. When I get to that interrupter, quam, utichum, walde temebant, I'm going to do the same thing I did in the main clause. I'm going to look for a subject, I'm going to look for a verb, and I'm going to look for a direct object. Quam does have that am. Again, my vocab has to come here. It means although. Is going to be a direct object because it's Oh, sorry. There's my right there, direct object, because it is accusative. I get to walde, again, vocab coming in, that means very. I get to the verb, temebant. Okay, does it have a marker? BA, yes. Does it have a clue? Answer is no. I'm going to translate it as was or were. So I don't have a nominative here. So what do I use? I use the same nominative I used before, which is the rest of the shopkeep. So when I put this in the subject verb direct object, I have they, understood subject, temebant, should be nt. We're fearing utichum. Now I have these other words that I had to deal with. Labentur, it needs to go up here with this verb, freely. So the rest of the shopkeepers freely were helping Clemens. Then I have these other two. This quam in the interrupter, it basically is connecting the two. It means although. And then this walde is telling me more about temebant. That's why they call them adverbs, because they tell me about the verb. So here I have the rest of the shopkeepers were freely helping Clemens, although they were fearing uticum walde very much. In my next sentence, I really have the last structure that I need to worry about, and that is the linking verb, which is going to be erat. So as I read through this, I have Clemens. I already know from previously that that's going to be my subject. I have comus. That doesn't have an ending that we're used to, but it is going to be nominative. Erat is going to be the verb. It ends in T, right? We're good. Et connects the two. Let's just deal with the non-Clemens comus erat. Okay, nominative is Clemens. Linking verb is was, erat, and then comus, which means friendly. So how does this work out? Well, let's look at it. For linking verbs, you're not going to have subject, verb, direct object. You're going to have subject, linking verb, and then a predicate nominative. That means that you're going to have a nominative, then a linking verb, then another nominative. That's how linking verbs work. Here are the linking verbs that are most common. Sume ses, suma sesa sunt, ramaras erat, ramas eratus, and erat. In this sentence, we have erat, which means was. So Clemens nominative, linking verb erat, comus nominative. For Clemens was friendly. Now we get into this next part of the sentence. Again, we have the et, so we're going to make a line there, and we're going to come all the way to where the verb is. This part of the sentence we're going to treat just like we have, because debat is not a linking verb, it's an action verb. We're going to treat as subject, verb, and direct object. As I look here, I have an is ending, which we haven't been dealing with yet. We have in weakum, which looks like em. We're going to go ahead and highlight that. And auxilium, which is definitely has a um. So let's see how that works out. Now I said that the is on the eis word we haven't dealt with. That's because it's an indirect object. It's dative. Again, endings that we should know. Subject, verb, direct objects, and indirect object is how we translate sentences into English. Okay, in this sentence, we have no subject, so we're going to give ourselves a subject of he. Then we have a verb, which is debat. We have possible direct object of invicum and auxilium. And then we have the EIS word, which is our indirect object. I look at the ba. Does it have a marker? Yes, it does. BA. So I'm going to translate it as was a were. He was giving. I look at these next two words, and I have a little bit of an issue because I have two and they're not connected with an et or anything. So I look up this word in vicum and I find out that it means in turn, so it's an adverb, and that means auxilium is going to be my direct object. He in turn was giving help to them. That's what that AS is. So if you'll follow this pattern where you're looking for a nominative and an accusative to determine the subject and the direct object, you're looking at the verb and deciding whether or not it has a marker or a clue, and you're fitting it into that subject, verb, direct object, indirect object pattern, you should come up with a lot better translations.